Saturday, September 27, 1913. I asked my friends to try to impress me more vividly.
It is scarcely necessary that we should be careful to impress you more vividly than we have already done, for we have managed to get through the messages as we intended them, to help you to realize somewhat of our life and conditions prevailing here. Only we would add that what should be clear to you is that, when we come here, we are not in our own proper element, but that what to you is a natural environment is to us as a mist, and through it we have to work as best we can.
Are you able to see me as I sit here writing?
We do see you, but with other eyes than yours. Our eyes are not accustomed to the effect of light as you have it on earth. Our light is of a different kind, a sort of interpenetrating element by which we are able to discern your inmost mind, and that is it to which we speak, to you yourself and not, of course, to your outward ears. So it is yourself we see, and not your material body, which is but an enveloping robe. When we touch you, therefore, you do not feel the touch physically but spiritually, and if you wish to apprehend our touch, you will have to keep this in mind and look deeper than the body and its mechanical brain. You would wish to know something more of the way we work here and the conditions in which our life is spent. Not everyone who comes over here is able to understand that one of the elementary truths which it is necessary to assimilate in order to progress is that God is no more visibly present here than he is in the earth life. They expect to see him bodily, and are much disappointed when they are told that that is a quite mistaken idea of the way of his dealing with us. His life and beauty are quite apparent on earth to those who can look deeper than the externals of nature. And so it is here, with this modification, that life here is more tangible, and easier to lay hold of and use by those who study its nature, and it pulsates all around us, and we, being in a more sensitive state, are more able to feel it than when we were in the earth life. Still, having said this on the general conditions, it is true to add that, from time to time, manifestations of the divine presence are given us, when some particular purpose necessitates, and of one of these I will tell you now. We were called to a tract of country where many people were to foregather, of different creeds and faiths and countries. When we arrived, we found that a band of missionary spirits had returned from their period of duty in one of the regions bordering on the earth sphere, where they had been working among souls just come over who did not realize that they had crossed the borderline between earth and the spirit land. Many had been enlightened, and these had been brought to the place in order that they might join with us in a service of thanksgiving before going to their own proper homes. They were of various ages, for the old had not progressed yet in becoming youthful and vigorous again, and the young had not progressed to complete stature. They were all agape with happy expectation, and, as one company after another of their new companions in this life arrived, they scanned their faces, and the different colored robes worn by the different orders and estates in wonder. By and by we were all assembled, and then we heard a burst of music which seemed to invade us all and unify the whole great multitude into one great family. Then we saw a great cross of light appear. It seemed to lie on the slope of the great mountain which bordered the plain, and, as we watched it, it began to break up into specks of bright light, and we gradually became aware that it was a large company of angels of a higher sphere who stood on the mountain in the form of a cross, and all about them was a golden glow, which we could feel at that distance as a warm breath of love. Gradually they became more distinct to our vision as they emerged more perfectly into this, to them, lower environment, and then we saw, standing over the square where the arms of the cross joined the stem, a larger being. We all seemed to know him at once instinctively. It was a manifestation of the Christ in what you have come to know as presence form. He stood there silent and still for a long time, and then lifted his right hand on high, and we saw a column of light descend and rest upon it as he held it aloft. This column was a pathway, and on it we saw another company descending, and, when they came to the uplifted hand, they paused and stood still with their hands folded on their breasts and heads bowed. Then slowly the hand moved out until it had swung round and down and the fingers pointed over the plain, and we saw the column stretch out towards us in mid-heaven until it bridged the space between the mountain and the plain, and the end of it rested over the multitude gathered there. Along this column walked the company last become visible, and hovered above us. They spread out their hands then, and all slowly turned towards the mountain, and softly we heard their voices half speaking and half singing a hymn of devotion to him who stood there all so beautiful and so holy that at first we were awed into silence. But presently we also took up their words and sang, or chanted, with them, for that evidently was their purpose in coming to us. And as we sang there arose between us and the mountain a mist of bluish tint which had a very curious effect. It seemed to act like a telescopic lens, and brought the vision of him nearer until we could see the expression on his face. It also acted similarly on the forms of those who stood just below him. But we had no eyes for them, only for his gracious face and form. I cannot describe the expression. It was a blend of things which words can only tell in small part. There were blended love and pity and joy and majesty, and I felt that life was a very sacred thing, when it held him and us in one bond. I think others felt something like this too, but we did not speak to one another, all our attention being taken up with the sight of him. Then slowly the mist melted into the atmosphere, and we saw the cross on the mountain and him standing as before, only seen more dimly, and the angels who had come over to us had gone, and hovered above him. And then all gradually faded away. But the effect was a very definite sense of his presence remaining and perpetual. Perhaps that was the object of the vision being given to the newcomers who, although they could not see so clearly as we could who had been here longer, yet would be able to see enough to encourage them and give them peace. We lingered some time longer, and then quietly went our ways, not speaking much, because we were so impressed with what we had witnessed. And also, in all these manifestations there is always so much to think out after. It is so glorious that one is not able, while it is taking place, to take in all the meaning. That has to be thought out gradually, and we talk it over, together, and each gives his impressions, and then we add them up, and find that a revelation has been given of something we did not understand before so well. In this instance what seemed to impress us most was the power he had of speaking to us in silence. He did not utter a word and yet we seemed to be hearing his voice speaking to us whenever he made a movement, and we understood quite well what the voice said, although it did not actually speak. That is all I can tell you now, so, goodbye, dear son, and may you, as you will, see for yourself one day what our Lord has in store for them who love him.